Hi, Anja.
Hey, hello, Tansy. How are you? How come your background is so blurry?
Well, I am on location in the Alps at the moment. And
Nice.
I thought I would do yeah, blurred background because I've got my skis back there.
Yeah,
But
once Bitcoin hits 100,000, I'll come and meet you there.
oh yeah,
Go skiing, drink white wine.
yeah, a fun show. Yeah, if Bitcoin hits 100,000, I think I would like to try and invest in property here. That would be nice. So, but thank you for joining me and blurring your background.
Yes. Same background, just a little bit fuzzy today.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm being very entertained by all the financial soap opera that's unfolding, this crescendo of chaos in the banking world, uh, mainly in the US, but we now see Credit Suisse struggling big time. I think that's been struggling already for a while, but it's sort of like everything is crescendoing, you know.
Mm.
Um, so it's interesting to watch this and to try to figure out, there's this fear that wells up, but then there's a sense of this is part of this unfolding of structures that are unsustainable and have questionable methods in how they protect our money. Um, so that's how I'm doing. You're probably doing a lot better because you're out skiing in the mountains. You're missing all the action, the soap opera.
Yeah, but I'm not far from Switzerland, so I was hoping that nothing kind of too devastating goes on there.
Oh,
But
that's right.
fly back. Um, but I'm really fascinated by this time. It's like the facade is
Yeah.
melting, the illusion is falling. And it's a little bit like when we talked about The Wizard of Oz and kind of peering behind the veil. We're starting to see that everything is a lot of smoke and levers, that nothing really is kind of sustained and strong, and essentially it's not what it's being presented to be, which is, oh, we can all trust the banks, right? So I think there's a lot of economists and a lot of people in the Bitcoin space that have been calling for a crisis for a long time, saying that we're relying on a lot of hot air at the moment. At some point that's all going to break, that the system is going to crumble, because there's just so much debt, and we're starting to see these first kind of banks and institutions start to crumble and to fail. And really, is that going to create a snowballing effect which takes down a lot of other banks and the whole kind of banking institution as a whole? So I'm kind of watching on in kind of fascination, because I
Yeah.
guess being in the space, there's a sort of pre-preparation for this, by listening to different economists in the space and just being in Bitcoin. I think it's one of those things is that we're all going to be involved in whatever happens, right? Like everything is, if our banks start to crash and crumble, especially in the US, like we're all going to see the impacts of that. But being in Bitcoin really makes me feel like I'm glad that I have that lifeline. And I'm so glad that I can kind of see this system from the outside. So I'm in quite a good position because I haven't really trusted the banking system for a while. And so it doesn't emotionally impact me. I
Mhm.
feel for all of the people that are impacted, but I have let go of my connection to the system quite a long time ago. So for me, it's just a sort of fascinating and quite
Yeah.
terrifying, in a distant way, implosion that we're witnessing. But so yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I personally still have I mean, I'm connected with one of the larger banks here. So far I haven't been too worried in terms of, my bank crashing and me losing my money or having to wait for the government to reimburse me for the money lost by a bank when it liquidates. So I haven't been like running to the bank, because that one was that this past weekend, all over social media, there was so much talk about running to the bank runs, and it has such a scary um, historical package around it, that term. But I didn't feel that with being in the larger bank. But I do see how, it's first the small ones that crumble, and it just starts moving higher and higher. And the crumbling might look a little different, but I'm starting to feel a little bit more like I think I need to deploy some of that money that's in that bank, in that US bank, into Bitcoin specifically, trying to move it back into that space. And I've been sort of holding off. I was just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, what the US will do with interest rates. Everybody's watching that like a hawk. How much are they going to increase versus decrease versus just not doing anything and waiting. But now with these bank failures, there's like a whole new player in the game. And so it sort of might speed this whole movement up a little. And you do see, you see the banks falling and Bitcoin is inching its way up, which is kind of thrilling to see. And so, yeah.
And do you think that there's a correlation between banks slipping away and Bitcoin moving up? What are your personal feelings about that?
I feel like there is. There's a correlation. Is it causation? I don't know. But it seems to be, you see people are getting worried, especially, you don't see it too much in the mainstream media. It's more like in the financial media, crypto media. People are really like waking up, maybe even like some of the stories I heard were that the folks there were a lot of tech startups in one or both of those banks that just crashed last week. And that some of them were saying they're safe because they also diversified into crypto. Like some of them had money in ETH, some of to back up their company, their growing startup. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely offers a safe haven away from the banks. And, these banks will only protect up to a certain amount of assets. So like, I think it's for the investors, or not the investors, but for the kind of clients, it's $250,000 that the insurance company for the bank will protect. And so if you've got more than that, you're going to lose it. And so that's why a lot of people are moving their money from small banks to bigger banks, because they're getting more protection from the bigger banks. And so it's going to create more bank runs. It's going to create a snowballing of more banks falling. And that just leads to huge centralization amongst very big banks, which are very controlled by the state. And so if you are, anyone, a tech startup or, most tech startups they use Silicon Valley Bank, and maybe banks aren't going to offer them the opportunities, but maybe they can get opportunities in DeFi to raise money. But I think that like in terms of safety of assets, it's like you either go super centralized, super big, super controlled by the government, or you go down the route of freedom, autonomy, and possibility, which is Bitcoin. So it's amazing because Bitcoin was created out of the 2008 financial crisis. And although it's a different sort of crisis, it still has a really important place here. And now we're seeing just how important it is to have somewhere else to hold your money. And the thing is that I think gold has been going up as well. People are looking for safe haven assets where they can store money. And Bitcoin still being relatively low. If it was like 80,000 right now, it would be like uncertain, but it's only, now 27,000. That's still low in proportion to where it's been. So it's like an ideal investment. And gold is a good investment for most people because, if banks start to disintegrate around the world, gold holds value around the world. But Bitcoin is so much more transactable, so much easier to send it around to different people. So it really is the only alternative to spendable money that isn't fiat. The Fed may kind of support the financial system for the next few years, like basically bailing out the banks or reducing interest rates, or even putting more money into the economy, maybe printing more money through quantitative easing. Because if the whole banking system crashes, the money system is kind of broken.
So it seems like this whole cycle is typical human financial behavior, as opposed to Bitcoin, which is a completely different vision.
That's such a good point, because this happens in pretty much every economy. There's always this boom and bust over like long periods of time. And it's why you see huge nations falling and other nations, becoming superpowers. It's always to do with money. And so often when people are left to their own devices with money, it becomes inflated. They can't help but create more of it. They're like, ooh, I sit next to the money printer and I can print more for myself. And it's just like, there's just like this innate piece of the human psyche that cannot help but to inflate the supply, which over time leads to the downfall of that currency and ultimately the downfall of the empire. And so what Bitcoin does is it takes the human element out. It's like there is only a limited supply. You cannot create more. And so that's a really important concept, is to keep that monetary amount secure, essentially, to keep it rare, so that money, that commodity, continues to hold value, and nobody who sits closer to it can get more money. And that's why we have proof of work. In order to get the Bitcoin, you have to put in resources, you have to put in effort, you have to put in energy. You can't just be close to a Bitcoin miner and like get given Bitcoin. So there is a process to the creation, and that's what's so important about Bitcoin, is it was deliberately made to combat this innate human capacity to for greed, basically, is where it all boils down to. Yeah. And right now Bitcoin, like, we price it in dollar terms, so dollar still is kind of interlinked with Bitcoin, and actually moving more towards Bitcoin actually would be supporting the kind of the empire dynamic. It would sustain the US as being a superpower. But if the US allows its currency to move into hyperinflation, that could be the downfall of the US kind of major hold on the world, and could lead to the rise of other superpowers like China.
Yeah, it seems like they're at this crossroads where they can either like make it or break it. And I mean, you see even in England, I mean, in London, it seems like, I mean, I haven't followed the specific new legislation in terms of crypto, but it seems like they are much more pro crypto and trying to work with crypto to sort of prop up their dominance in the world, their financial dominance again. So that's sort of interesting to watch, being sort of a close relative of the US, what they're up to.
I mean, it's so interesting to see the age as well of all of the people like who are making these decisions in the US. I'm like, wow,
Yes,
really the boom.
they're really old, like 70, 80-year-old men.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we have a little bit of a younger government in the UK.
Ah, okay.
And they're just a little bit more. I think that the plan, there's really a kind of orchestrated sense of what we want for Britain. And so those in power at the moment, so the Conservatives, they're really thinking about how we become a scientific kind of superpower in the world, how we really bring innovation here, how we bring more jobs, how we encourage new technology, because they see it's the future. So they want to
Yeah.
be a part of that future. Whereas these boomers, they're not kind of thinking about like where they want to position themselves in the future. They're very much thinking about like what they want now. And it's a very old school kind of
Yeah.
take down your enemies rather than recognizing how you can kind of nurture and sustain support and keep the power in the place. So England is like, they want it to be a powerful hub. And the problem with England is we don't have that much usable free like or cheap energy. So the energy piece in terms of the mining is going to be difficult, but in terms of innovation, it's a really great place to be. And there's a whole package that's just come out of our budget, which is putting more money into childcare to help women, do
Hmm.
work more if they would like to sustain like the economy, to give more to people who are working, more working tax credits to help support them. So there is this real concerted effort to help people work more and to keep people kind of giving back to the economy, but also thriving for themselves. So it's a very different type of energy than I see what's going on in America.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they're kind of generating the engine in England, and in America, they're kind of cutting off wires, the things they don't want.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like these the people that are part of our political system, they're just so stuck, in the old world, in the old ways, history, in the past, like you said. They can't even imagine this possibility. It's like there's this wall and they can't seem to get through it. And then you have all these younger people who are into technology, emerging technology, and including crypto, and they're trying to like educate them. They go to Washington all the time to try to share what they know and to educate, but there's just this wall. And I feel like nothing's going to, or not much will move forward in a proactive, positive way until some of these individuals leave. Go home.
On multiple levels, no.
Multiple levels. I don't wish anything bad, but it's time for them to pass the baton.
Yeah,
It really is
yeah,
for the health of this country.
yeah. I think it's so surprising how, and that just shows this kind of ego and power of like those who kind of are really holding on and they don't understand what
Yeah.
is coming up or or even how to communicate. Like Biden just kind of walking out of press conferences because he can't take Q&As because he's just not as present for it. Like you have to be really on it, really holding lots of things in your head to kind of confront all of these huge issues that are taking place in any country, right? And so,
Yeah.
it could be partly his age, but also, a lot his age, but also just the way that he is. But for whatever reason, he's just not able to sustain that level um, of like connection to the people and what's going on. And the thing is, you need leaders. You do need leaders, especially of one of the biggest countries in the world, like really the global superpower. You need people in power who are on it, who can see what's coming, who understand all of the different pieces and can actually defend why they are doing certain things. And like watching, is it Janet Yellen? And
Yeah.
yeah, and Biden and I mean all of it, like Nancy Pelosi, it's just like
Yeah.
it's kind of car crash TV. And it's like this is not setting the US up for success. This is just a slow and steady decline because you've got people at the top who are clinging on
Yes.
when they should really, like you say, pass the baton. It's really,
Yeah, you do get that energy of clinging. it's like all the things that come out, decisions and verbiage that comes out of our government, it's sort of clouded with this clinging sense, this desperation, this, again, bumping into all kinds of walls, just by listening to the language that they share, in their speeches and press releases. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. Months, weeks, days. Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting, like since COVID, it's just like how much we all have a sense of being able to talk about it. Like I feel like before COVID, just in terms of Zoom, in terms of access to
Yeah.
all different forms of news, new people, people being interested in talking about politics and economics on a bigger level. I guess Bitcoin going through that phase. So a lot more people came into Bitcoin that maybe weren't in it before. There's so many amazing voices that you can now listen to. And people who you wouldn't expect are now talking about the economy and talking about politics. And so I feel like there's a much bigger amount of us who are really we're kind of part of this, like we're all watching it together, we're all kind of community together, and you're hearing really great ideas. And so there are these people at the top who are, not kind of leading by innovation or excitement, and they're kind of just clinging on. But it's really refreshing and nice to feel that we're not alone in thinking that there is a lot of people who are clever, who are on it, who understand what's going on. And so at some point I do feel like there is hopefully will still be a bit of a safety net of those sorts of people, so when the baton gets passed, they can rise up and start to make shifts and changes in the direction that we want to go. So yeah, yay. I don't really know what our conversation was fully about today. What I'm going to title this one.
About clinging and letting go.
Yeah.
and the future possibilities with Bitcoin.
Yeah. And that works well with the banks as well. It's like clinging to the old system by having your money in banks, but also, letting go and like trying something new with Bitcoin and new technology and new money. And I'm sorry to the viewers today. My internet isn't that great up here in the mountains. And so there will be points when either I or Anja have been freezing. So I really hope that doesn't affect your watching experience too much. But thank you for watching through that. And if you are enjoying these videos, then please do like, subscribe, and hit the bell button and the all, so you always get to watch our videos every week. That would be great.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and share with your friends as well, so they can start dabbling into Bitcoin and sort of new possibilities for financial, because I think people are becoming more and more aware of what's happening and how delicate the system is at the moment and has been. So yeah, share.
Yes, and I've got a Bitcoin masterclass that's going to be live. So I'm going to be teaching about Bitcoin and money. So if you would like to come to that, then do go on our website, thecryptoethic.com, and find all the details for the masterclass, which will be live and coming up soon. Or just say hi, just send us an email and let us know what you think of the show. That would be great too.
And leave comments below as well if you have some thoughts, ideas about what we might talk about, or suggestions. So
yeah, we've had a few comments before from Veronica, so I just want to give you a big shout out. Thank you for commenting.
Thank you, Veronica.
Alrighty, well, thank you, Anja, for this conversation, and thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Ciao.